For joining us for this month's technology talk. I'm Billy Talley, your host. This month I have Jason Kaufman and Forrest Kneuppel with Coro joining us to talk about cybersecurity for small businesses. Jason, can you introduce yourself? Tell a little bit about, I think you got a couple of security certificates you hold.
Yeah. So Jason Kaufman, I work for a company called Telarus. So we are a technology services distributor. And think of us as an extension of Billy and his team, where we look at an agnostic stance when it comes to cybersecurity and pretty much anything else in the business technology world. And what we do is we help, try to find out where the gaps are, what gaps needed to be filled, and what other options are out there. And we try to, be on your side of the table and bring the correct providers to come into where we aren't trying to fit a square in a peg hole, but we're trying to fit that exact solution that fits your needs. And one thing that we always find is when it comes to SMB customers, the ones that are smaller in nature that don't have the resources or funds to, get those really, really intricate enterprise solutions, they still need some form of cybersecurity because they are one of the biggest threats that are out there. And, how are we going to protect them? Because, even though they might not be the biggest target, but the customers that they work with are some of the biggest targets. So those threat actors are always looking for what's the easiest way to get that data. So again, a little bit about me, myself. I hold some of the cybersecurity certifications out there that are kind of well known. I have my CISSP, CISM, and CCSP. So if you follow ISC squared or ISACA, I hold 3 of their certifications plus some other ones in the industry like the CompTIA Security Plus, some of the network security stuff from like Fortinet, Velo, and some of those other ones. So what I always joke about with Billy is I offer nerd as a service, and that's something that you could also take advantage of as well. So back to you,
Forrest,
Billy.
tell us a little bit about yourself and Coro.
Sure, excellent. So I'll start off. Forrest Kneuppel, I'm the vice president of channel over here at Coro Cybersecurity. I don't have nearly as many acronym letters behind my name or certifications as the other gentlemen on this call, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn last night, so I think that qualifies me for something. Actually, so Coro Cybersecurity, we are very specifically focused on the small and mid market. We are letting the enterprise take their money and their budget and their people and go and focus on individual point solutions, whereas our company actually is the first to come out with a modular cybersecurity platform as a service. We have built our own IP to be able to put a singular pane of glass to be able to work very similar to a SIM type of tool, which I don't know if we're going to talk about today, but we work as our own tool to be able to cover multiple facets of what any small and mid-sized business should be protecting themselves against, including the most common threats like ransomware, malware, etc. So about myself, I have actually been in the technology sector for well longer than this gray on my beard, 20 some plus years at this point, and have worked from the VAR supplier side of the house over to where we are in the actual supplier. So we actually provide the end service to the customers and are kind of like an extra leg on what Telarus and Teleconnect bring to the table for you guys.
So you kind of hit on it a little bit, but so why are criminals increasingly targeting the small businesses and medium-sized businesses instead of the enterprise business?
Well, I'll jump in right on that one. It's profitable now. I mean, if you want to call it what it is, the hackers are not the typical Neo from a movie sitting in his mom's basement trying to hack you. It is generally very large groups of people that are going out, and they are for-profit businesses. But for a long time, all the profitability was in the enterprises. Go for the big money. Well, they did that because of how much time it took for them to actually build a load, if you will. It's what they call it, build a workload to be able to go after your business and get the information that they're going to try to sell on the dark web and do nefarious things with. AI, good and bad, over the years has actually turned hacking into a service, literally hacker as a service, where they can do this at pennies on the dollar. And now Think about it this way. Now, instead of spending all that time and effort and money on going after big deals with big enterprises, they can do it very inexpensively and go after the folks that generally don't have as deep of security inside of their stack. And I've done a couple different talks on this, but it's kind of like thinking about a car thief. A car thief does not just go for the biggest, flashiest car on the street. They're literally walking down the street and trying to open car doors and see which ones have alarms and locks and so on them. If they don't have an alarm or a lock on them, that's the easier target. Well, guess what? Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on where you are, that SMB market is the unlocked car door right now.
Yeah, that's a great
Anything you
point.
want
If
to
you
add,
don't mind
Jason?
me, yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't mind me adding on to that. So piggybacking off of the hacker as a service, when we pulled the last data points on there, hacker as a service, ransomware as a service, that software module that was created by those really efficient hackers, now anybody can use them. Somebody can sign up, and the price for it is like $10 a month. So if you're investing $10 a month into something that's going to do all the work for you, what are you going to go after? The company that has easy vulnerabilities, that's easy to gain access into their stuff, get their data, and possibly get 10 to 20,000 out of it, but do that at scale, or try to go for the large Walmarts or Targets or Home Depots of the world that, yeah, it's going to take you a long time to get in there because they have all this cybersecurity maturity, but you land that whale, you're going to get a lot of money. So which one's the least amount of effort? That easy win is to go after the SMB because they just put your information in a tool, or they don't even have to put in any information. They're scanning for it and seeing, oh, this IP address that's on the public web has this vulnerability. Let's go see what we can do there, and it's just a click of a button. You hit enter, you're good to go. And now they're inside your company and also going after your customers. So it's more of a land and expand type thing. So we're seeing that across the board, and that's a lot of the education that we're performing, which leads us to saying, hey, you should talk to our partner Coro on this because they have a very cost-effective platform. And I don't want to sell on your behalf, Forrest, but
Please.
one thing. So, but one thing that's what we do. We're here for the education and telling you why you're a target, because everybody assumes, hey, we're not a target because we only have $500,000 in revenue a year, or $1 million or $2 million. We're not one of those global recognized companies where somebody can find our name on Google on the first few searches. You actually have to dig deep, or we don't even have a social media presence. Like, those are the companies that are getting breached the most. And I live in a small town in Florida to where there are mom and pop shops that have gone through multiple generations with these businesses that are now out of business because they had a breach. Their stuff got encrypted. They couldn't get it back. They couldn't pay the ransom because they don't have that extra cash lying around. So they had to close up shop, all because of cybersecurity incident, because they didn't have the defenses in place. And 100% agree with you, Forrest. This stuff is very professional. It is not, some backdoor person trying to do a drug deal. It is literally lawyers and lawyers negotiating on how much this data is going to cost to get back. And even after they find a price, half the time they don't even, after the pay up happens, the ransom's paid, they don't even give access to the data back. They just go ghost. So you still don't even know if you're going to get that data back. So again, SMB is a massive, massive target right now for ease of access, is the simplest way to put it.
Billy, I'm going to piggyback on that even more. We just talked about the outside issues. Those are the hackers trying to come in, where the small and mid-sized businesses are also being attacked and generally don't have a lot of tools to be able to prevent it, is inside the house.
Yes.
When you have internal workers that are looking for their next job, looking to cash out on some nefarious, hopefully not, but nefarious type of scenario with the information that is available and not locked down inside of your own organization, it's a scary thought. But there are a lot of tools that, quite frankly, have been available that a lot of small businesses just didn't even know existed. And so this is where hopefully we'll get into conversations around user data governance and endpoint data governance and such, that you can actually show how you can protect not only from the outside, but from the inside.
Yeah, I had a customer that had literally had a employee download their entire database of customers and all their information and took it to a competitor.
Oh yeah. I have multiple stories of somebody that put our user data governance solution in and then called me almost laughing but upset because they had to have very uncomfortable discussions with people inside of their organization that were flagging for anything from sending a resume out regularly from their work email address to downloading customer lists to you name it. It's unfortunate, but a real thing.
And one of the things we haven't
Okay.
even discussed yet is non-malicious and breaches. We're talking about somebody that maliciously knows they're sending or downloading data that they shouldn't be having. What happens if somebody doesn't know that they're sending proprietary, confidential, or identifiable information, something that could lead to fines or proprietary data getting into the wrong hands? I mean, that's where 86% of the breaches come from, is somebody who isn't trained, that clicks on a certain social engineering link or accidentally sends an email with some information that's non-encrypted or shouldn't even be in the email in the first place, that they didn't even know.
So how can small businesses, manage cybersecurity with limited resources?
If you don't mind, I'll take that one first, Forrest. So
Okay.
yeah, the first thing is, we try to prioritize where all the gaps are. If somebody's starting greenfield, they don't have really anything in place. Okay, so that means we're starting from ground zero. What are the first hit points that we can talk about that are, one, very cost effective, and two, hit the most of the threat landscape and mitigate those attacks? The one that we just talked about was the employees themselves. That 86% number is real, and it keeps growing. Like 2 years ago, it was in the minimum 40s, like it was low 40s area. Now high 86% of breaches happen because social engineering. Somebody clicked on a link that they shouldn't have. So how do employees recognize that email is a phishing attempt, that link is not really going where they're saying it's going? That attachment isn't really a PDF file of somebody's invoice or a picture of something. It's actually an executable that starts a program and then displays what they're expecting to see, but they don't know anything has happened. But now somebody already has access to their internal systems. Blocking that type of stuff is actually very cost effective. User awareness training alone is somewhere around $3 a user, give or take. So if you're looking at an SMB and they want to say, hey, how do we hit the most bang for our buck? Starting with that, and then we always try to lead with some form of a penetration test. Test to see where you're at now, and then we can see where you can go from there. And then there's many cost-effective solutions that are tailored for the SMB in order to get even more protected to mitigate those risks. And I think that's a pretty good segue over to Forrest's answer.
I was going to say there's so many different ways to answer this depending on which direction you want to come in from. First, it's got to start off with how comfortable are you with the level of security that you have? And because our job is not to come in here with a bunch of fear and uncertainty doubt. You can certainly open up a web page anywhere and see where the latest and how many different things have been happening out there in the marketplace. But we do know with pretty good certainty that there's 4 areas that every company is going to be attacked on. These aren't the only areas. These are the most common areas. You're going to be attacked through your email. Every single person that's listening to this has gotten phishing emails and all kinds of nasty stuff, and now it's coming through text and everything else. But email. We know you're going to be attacked at the endpoint. This is where people are trying to get malware onto your devices, your servers, whatever. And you're making sure that you try to solidify that through some means so that folks don't have easy access onto your devices. The third part that people don't think about is cloud security. Now, the heavy majority of small businesses, just because of the cost of being able to do it this way, have moved to some version of either Microsoft 365 or probably Google Workspace, a paid Google Workspace. What they don't think about is that now, as a business owner or somebody in my organization, I'm probably saving a lot of information inside of OneDrive, Google Drive. I'm sharing a bunch of information on Zoom or Teams or Slack or Box or Dropbox, even Salesforce for that matter. And that information is not inherently protected, right? So if I have a bunch of information, and usually I do inside of a OneDrive or a SharePoint or something like that, that is not immediately protected because you have Microsoft or because you have Google. In fact, they'll come out and say directly, that's not what they do. So you do need to think very heavily about having something around cloud security to make sure that when that stuff moves off, off of one of those areas, or frankly, somebody puts something into it, let's say they put a malicious link for anybody else that's sharing that to click in, that is an area that is missed very commonly by small businesses. And it is a great entry point, frankly, for the bad guys. The fourth one is really around user data information, and there's a bunch of different ways to protect that. So that's where I usually will start the conversations to see what somebody already has in place. You need to take a look at what your company already has in place and how solidified, how solid your checks and balances are to make sure that those things are working. But then take a look at these other areas. I would bet that a heavy majority of folks probably have email, probably have some endpoint, probably do not have anything around data loss, and probably do not have anything around cloud security. So my 2 cents.
That's
Okay.
great points. And if you look at to piggyback on that, talking about the cloud providers, if you look at the shared responsibility model, no matter how much you rely on the cloud provider to support on the back end, none of it includes data. So yeah, they can do some redundancy and back it up, but they're not going to protect the data from being sent externally to the wherever it's going. That has to be done by the company itself, whether they're doing it internally or relying on a third party to handle that. So 100% agree. That's a great point.
So you mentioned employees earlier. So what role do employees play in the cybersecurity function, and how do you get them trained?
Jason, you want to grab that one first, and I'll piggyback?
Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you. So yeah, just like I mentioned this data point a few times, employees are 80, 85, 86%. The numbers are always 84 to 86. So you're hearing me say those numbers over and over again. That's the percentage of breaches that happen because employees, not because a network had a vulnerability in it or an endpoint. I mean, those are very important to protect too. That's the reason why that number is so high, because companies are better at protecting the technology. But employees, the one thing that we always come back to is that those 2 words, human error. They get that email, oh, I got free Starbucks, and somebody's gave me a free link here. Cool, I'm going to take that. And then they click on it, they're happy, but that's free Starbucks never comes because all it was a malicious link that came in that now they have some information. Whether it's, or it could be a phone call. Hey, I'm your IT, or, I'm your CEO. We get texts from our CEOs all the time asking for gift cards, send it here, get this much
Right.
from this type of company and send it here. So employees actually are the biggest threat. And, it's actually very cost effective to protect that threat, or I don't want to say, really protect it holistically, but mitigate a potential breach, just because by you're educating them on, hey, watch out for stuff like this. And now with AI, generative AI that's come into play, those malicious emails, those texts, those voice calls, all being run by a bot or even a person on the back end, but it sounds much better than what it did before. You could always find some form of, broken sentence or grammar that was wrong, something that was very, very easy to spot within this stuff, but now you can't, because it actually has an engine behind it that makes it sound super realistic. There's even tools now to make an accent sound like it's directly from somebody from the US. So you're actually taking that person, that no matter where they're from, and making them sound like they're your next door neighbor. They can even take it and make it literally sound like that person. They're doing all that stuff now in the music industry. So it's kind of scary what's out there, but that's the biggest threat that they have. And the easiest way to protect it is letting them know, hey, you are a threat. This stuff you need to watch for.
Yeah, I'd say some of the tools that you have available to you through Billy, through Jason, and so on, are things like a cybersecurity matrix. And when you take a look at that cybersecurity matrix, it'll talk about all the different. There's a lot of different things that you could do to harden the organization. But one of those things, because of the employees piece, is security awareness. So security awareness is just what it sounds like. It's doing test environments and so on out to your employees to see whether or not they would click on something, and then congratulating them or booing them if they if they act or don't act correctly. That can certainly make a big impact on folks that aren't normally thinking about this every single day. However, you still have to have the tools for when it doesn't work, because people are never going to be infallible as much as we'd like to be. So what do you have behind the scenes as a small business to protect yourselves when, on purpose or otherwise, they do something that puts your business at risk? This is where you need to, like Coro in particular. Obviously, I got to pay for my time here, but Coro in particular does have several different tools in its set that will take a look for anomalous behavior. Hey, is Billy just logged in from Ghana? He's not normally in Ghana. Maybe I should block this thing, right? So, or I have somebody that has tried to do a whole bunch of logins and it doesn't look right. Or, hey, look, this email that came in looks just like Coro.net, but that O looks like more of a zero. This might be spoofed. These are all little tools that are available to a small business through a solution like Coro that catches these things. I mean, we have top level results on being able to catch the most common ways that people are trying to break into your business. Um, it, I'd love to say that any security product is 100%. When we find it, that'll be the magic bullet and everybody will own it. But it is a layered approach. You have to take a look at security in layers. I bandage the large wound, and then I try to figure out where there's little cracks in the area, to be able to fill those in to whatever level you're comfortable being able to do. And also, of course, we get into affordability. These tools can get expensive when you get up into the enterprise level. That's why Coro specifically went after having a mission of protecting the underprotected, which is the SMB market. We came with a very affordable tool to be able to do many things instead of just one thing. So, yeah.
So how does prioritizing cybersecurity impact customer trust and business growth?
Brand is a big, big deal.
Yes.
It is. I'll put it in perspective this way. I've had to change banks a couple times because I do know what I know inside of cybersecurity. And when I started having a conversation with that bank about how they were or were not securing my information as a client, that made me very nervous. Now that's without having a breach. Now take a look at getting your name in the newspaper for a breach, and they are happening all the time. You can go on a multitude of websites right now and probably pull up a half a dozen from this week alone. You do not want to be on that list. That is a brand challenge that can become a big one really fast. And a lot of small businesses have a very hard time recovering from them when they make the news. I will say the other portion of that is that if you are in the supply chain for a larger organization, um, you don't get to be in that supply chain very long without having some security measures in place. In fact, we're seeing this pushed down more and more from larger enterprises where they are uh, uh, making it absolutely necessary for anybody in their supply chain to have cybersecurity insurance. Well, cybersecurity insurance isn't free. So now we have to start taking a look down that road. And that might be a good topic for a further questioner down the road here too.
Yeah, and cybersecurity insurance isn't free, and it's also not automatic anymore. So there's a list of controls you have to go through and requirements. So you have to hit a minimum threshold. Like you have to check off, I'm doing all this, and this is how I'm doing it. And even worse, if you need to go have a payout, like you have a breach or something that the loss of business continuity, something that's an event, you're even getting harder questions when it comes to a payout. So yeah, risk management is actually, our third party risk management is one of the top requests that we are getting now, especially from the enterprise space. And a lot of their third parties that they use are smaller entities that work on a smaller segment of their business, like even IoT monitoring is a big one. A Fortune 50 company is leveraging a 15-person company to monitor some of their IoT devices in a specific area. So imagine that. Now they're getting hit with all these questions that are being required from this Fortune 50 company who's definitely, a target. But what's the easiest way to get in that target? That company that doesn't have anything going on. So that company needs down to make sure that the companies that they work with are protected because if they have access in their systems, that's the last thing that they want is a breach to come from that side of the house. So yeah, and that from that is visibility. People only see what's in the news and they make their own assumption. They don't really wait for the story to come out after the fact. I mean, look at what happened with CrowdStrike. That really wasn't a cybersecurity instance. It's a cybersecurity company that didn't have a really good change management policy on a patch that they implemented. But it went global news because now Delta can't do any flights. There's multiple companies that are locked out. Banks are down. I have Chase Bank. I couldn't go into the branch I normally do because their computers were down. And you can see what happens from the stock price. Their stock price, dropped 25 points just, overnight. And obviously it's coming back up. It's a great company, don't get me wrong, but they made a massive mistake there. But the visibility that you get from a cybersecurity incident is massive. I mean, ask yourself the question, if you know your data is not being protected by somebody, just from your point, Forrest, are you gonna do business there? Are you gonna let them store your information where somebody else is gonna get it? I know I wouldn't.
So before we close, are there any, do you have some takeaways, some actionable items that a small business owner could, start today, start the process of, starting a cybersecurity program or,
Yeah.
getting their data?
Yeah. The first piece, unfortunately, ignorance is still negligence, right? So I have seen a number of companies that may or may not want to do the penetration test, may not want to do a security assessment, because now that I know where my holes are, it's real. But guess what? Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that somebody's not going to take advantage of that hole. So my first recommendation, there's plenty of organizations, Coro is one of them, that will come in and provide you with a security assessment. We can do one for you literally in about 5 minutes. We can spin up a proof of value for you and show you where you're currently being flagged. This isn't even using us for a full-on solution. It's just literally a view of what's going on right now. It's different from a penetration test. That's an entirely different area that I would also recommend for people to take a look at if they haven't done it. But those are two easy starting points to say, hey, listen, do I have a problem and how bad is it? Now that I've identified if and what that problem is, I can very specifically start targeting how to fix that. It is bad a bad job for anybody like myself to come in and say, hey, I'm just going to sell you all this stuff because it's going to fix everything. That's not true. What I need to do is come in and understand where I can help you better the environment so that you don't have to have a bad call with the insurance company or your suppliers or whatever else.
Yeah, excellent points. And where we start is, always find a trusted resource that you can lean on for information. And that's where we always tell our trusted advisors, and where we sit at, Telarus is, if you're starting from scratch and you don't know where to go, it's not your job to know the ins and outs of cybersecurity, where all the gaps are, what you need to do to protect it. That's our job. You have your business to run, but it's always great to ask the questions like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is my business. I'm not having any protections now, or I have this. What are your thoughts on this? And get an honest answer. I mean, it's just like Forrest was saying, we're not going to try to sell you, the used car down the road with the big trunk and everything else in between. We just want to have that honest conversation with you is, hey, these are some gaps that we could see. Here's some priorities. And if you're starting out, just like I mentioned before, we can probably get you started out with a few bucks a user, and you literally just mitigated a huge threat landscape just by training your employees and testing them if they're understanding the training. So, I mean, there's ways to dip your toe in the water, and as you're on the road to cybersecurity maturity. But if you want to jump all in, great platforms like Coro that can do many different areas of cybersecurity are a great avenue to go down. But there's also other options if you want to dip your toe in and maybe try this, or you want to look at other platforms. There are avenues for that as well. So the biggest takeaway that I can say is just ask questions, find somebody that you trust that is not going to give you that sales pitch, but actually give you true and relevant data to your business, and rely on them for that information so you don't have to go out and try to figure it out yourself. To figure it out yourself, do it yourselves, are going to find a link on Google, they're going to click on it, they're going to pay for whatever the ad says, and they're going to find out it's not really what it seems. So that's my biggest takeaway, and I hope that resonates.
I want to be, respectful of everybody's time. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. If anybody's watching this video at some point in time and you have more questions, just reach out and we'll help you go through the journey. I hope you join us next month when we talk about AI for law firms. Jason, any takeaways we're going to get from that next month that you can think?
Yeah, and how AI tools are going to be, how can they be leveraged in order to like automate tasks, make things go more efficient when it comes to case management, scheduling, all that stuff, documentation. But then also, how do you have a repository where you can easily get information, whether it's a specific law, a specific case, something like that. There's many ways that law practices have become more efficient and actually really effective by using tools for AI. Gathering insights from calls, texts, emails, tracking everything so you can attach it to make sure you're billing correctly. There's a lot of things that can come from AI tools for law practices.
Okay, great. Thanks again. Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for watching.